Serious, Reddit. What is your strangest glitch in the Matrix moment that cannot be explained? When my son was about 4 years old one night he started hounding me to ring Nana. I thought it odd to begin with as he had never asked to call her before, so I just put him off for an hour or so and he came back and insisted that I call her. Turns out she was sitting on her lounge experiencing a massive tachycardia event and couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance and met her at the hospital. Same week she had a pacemaker and defib unit implanted to fix the problem. To this day I cannot explain what drove him to get me to call, but I am very glad he did. He doesn't even remember it. I arrived 10 minutes early to school one day, so I put on my headphones and started to listen a 10 minutes track I loved. When it was over I started walking to the entrance, but nobody was there. It was always full of people waiting for it to open. So I thought I miscalculated the time and I was late. But when I checked my watch, only 2 minutes had passed since I arrived and I sat there for the remaining 8 minutes thinking what the frick had happened. This happened to people I know, not to me directly. A woman who works with my mum was out doing her grocery shopping one night and ran into me at the supermarket. She told my mum about the encounter the next day and asked why I didn't recognize her, as we saw each other once every few weeks when I'd go and help with any heavy lifting at their store. My mum confirmed that it couldn't have been me as I was at home. The woman also mentioned feeling oddly nauseous during the interaction. I was about 16 or 17 at the time. Another woman I know said she didn't know I walked through the park near her home after work, dumbfounded by her observation. I listened as she explained that she'd seen me every so often after work, walking briskly through a large park, which I do know of but have only driven past, as if I was exercising. She said I walked close by her the previous evening and she was going to speed up to catch up with me and say hello, but as she started to she began to feel ill, so she slowed down and then sat on a bench for a few minutes. By then she'd lost sight of me. This happened about 3 years ago and both occurrences were miles apart. I have a not so common name, but for the sake of the story let's say it's John Doe. All my life, through school, college, army and air force, I never met another soul with the same name. The one day in the mess hall someone is calling for SGT John Doe, and just as I'm about to stand up I hear from across the room. There's another guy there with my name. Same rank, same name, same corps too. Worked on the same base for 10 years and our paths never crossed once. Stopped at the gas station on my way to work one morning. I take out my debit card and take my car keys with me and leave everything in the car. Pay for my stuff and throw my debit card in the metal cup I have in my car. Literally half a second later I look down and my card is gone. Pulled apart everything trying to look for it and couldn't find it. I go to work and go home to find it sitting on my desk. Double check my bank account to make sure it was the card I used, and it was. To this day I still have no idea what happened. Saw a dude with no face driving a car. No features at all. It was just blank. I did more than just glance at him, I was staring. Just smooth skin and a men's haircut. One day I visited my father for the weekend. At night, I put my phone on the charger next to my bed and went to sleep. Morning after, the phone is gone. Like, literally gone. I spent the rest of the weekend searching for it. Inside every pot, box, drawer or small tea locker. I searched through my old man's ties and underwear looking for it. Every nook and cranny in the goddamn 50 SQM apartment and nothing. Had to buy a new phone. About 10 months go by. I visited my father a couple more times. Last week I took my wife with me. It was raining and we got soaked. She went to change in the small guest room and thought there were spare clothes of mine inside a small drawer. There should not be. BTW. She found a small folded pair of socks that weren't neither mine nor my father's. Inside the socks, the lost phone. My family go to a garden center near my town every winter. Pretty Christmas lights. Well, this one year, the day before we were supposed to go, I had a dream that on our way, the tire of the car came off and we crashed hard. It was such a horrible, graphic dream. My mum's legs had been crushed, my dad stuck, etc. Well, I told my mum in the morning and she joked that she checked the wheels. She actually must have. She said the car had felt weird and the dream unnerved her. Lo and behold, the tire is loose and needs to be taken to a mechanic. Really weird experience, especially as I've never had a dream feel so real before. Had to do an exam at school. Started off pretty normal, then pretty soon I realized I'd done it before somewhere and I remembered what I got wrong the first time, so I pretty much aced the text. The thing is, this was a national test, so there is no way I could have done it already. I have no clue where I would have even done it before anyway, as none of my classmates remembered it. That was the only time I got a high distinction in science class. Around 15 years ago I was on a small road trip with my family. My younger brother and I were in the back seat. I start thinking about a song in my head from the video game Road Rash 3, which at that point I hadn't played in a few years. A few seconds later my younger brother starts humming the song out loud next to me. I still have no idea what happened. Did we both think about that song randomly at the same time? Did I think it and project it telepathically? Did I read his mind? Why that song? Years after we had last played the game. Still bugs me to this day. Once, I walked into my living room from the hallway, saw my mom in the kitchen pouring a bowl of something, fully clothed, important to the story, and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She ignored me, put something in the fridge, and walked into her room. I figured she didn't hear me and walked into my room. Not even 2 minutes later she walks into my room, soaking wet, in a towel, and tells me she had fallen asleep in the bathtub and had just woken up. Weirdest crap ever. Year 3 or 4 at school in the UK, so I'd have been like 7 or something. Anyway, at the end of school we all had to line up in our year groups in the yard and we would be led by our teacher to the front of school and either onto the bus or picked up. The pathway from the back to the front of school was narrow, so all single file. I was walking along, chatting and laughing with my peers in front and behind of me. Next thing I know, I'm stood on the path completely alone. The teacher comes running back from around the front of the school and says, "Craig, hurry, you'll miss the bus." I'd literally skipped a few minutes of time. I've always remembered it. When I was doing my internship in College City, there was a fella across the way from me as we were traveling on the public transport line. I noticed him because he was wearing an intricate brown suit and checking a pocket watch for the time off him. When we both got off at School Avenue, he had a quick pace and was rushing ahead of me. Although he was crazy when he walked into traffic, he made it past the work van coming at him from the right, and I was terrified for him because a car was coming fast from the left. However, when the work van passed and stopped blocking my sight, so I couldn't see what became of him, he was gone. What the frick? I still wonder where he went 6 years later. As a kid I was sitting home alone watching TV until I lost the TV remote. I was literally tearing up my entire living room trying to find the thing. Eventually I gave up and just sat there watching some stupid channel, and then the remote literally fell on top of my head. On a 4-hour bus ride in Vietnam, heading towards the end of the trip when we pass a small village near a major city, the bus driver and 2 of his friends were talking and one of them goes, "Wow, look at her." And next to the bus I see a woman with shorts and a t-shirt on taking off her bike helmet. I think nothing of it. That is until we get to the major city and I'm almost at my stop where I see the same exact woman doing the same exact action, taking off her helmet in the same exact motion. The bus driver and his friends also saw her and said, "Crap." Apparently this is common to them as they had a word to describe them. Early last month I went online to pay a bill, like I've done for years. I get to the last page before finishing and the web page freaks out, with a multitude of display issues before finally receiving an error message. After several attempts to pay I give up, assuming the site is having issues. I go back 2 days later and pay my bill, and it goes through normally, with me getting my usual text and email notifying me I paid. I'm very confused a few weeks later when I check my email and find a notice from the company whose bill I paid, with a semi-threatening email saying the bill is due that day and do I need to set up a payment plan. I've been dealing with the company for almost a decade and have never been late in paying. I check my credit card account, and there's no record of me paying. Not other text or email I received still in my records. I pay the bill and chalk it up to a senior moment on my part. Last week I get my one credit card bill. It says I never paid my last bill, so now I've got that bill to pay, plus the interest. I find my previous bill, open but with the invoice in place, in my living room. I'm physically disabled and can't drive, and I always pay that credit card bill in person. After they fricked up my payment years ago, a family member always takes me to my credit union to pay that bill. And like me, he remembers us going down to pay the bill they say I never paid. He and I even remember a conversation we had on the way down to the credit union and going grocery shopping afterward. But yet the bill isn't paid and the bill is in my possession still. Saw a pair of legs on an infrared camera. Was alone in the house at the time. I ran into an old friend from high school that I hadn't seen for a decade, which was odd because I live several hundred miles from where I grew up. We did a bit of catching up, then went about our lives. 2 weeks later, I ran into him again 5,100 miles away in Germany. In my area there are apiaries. An old girlfriend and I were driving down a backcountry road, exploring the area, and we both saw an old lady in dark clothes tending to a few beehives in an open field not far from the road, maybe 50 yards or so from the road. She was covered in bees. I slowed down, the bees covered the woman, and then the bees all flew away, and the lady was gone. There was no way she could have vanished ahead. We both saw it happen. I dated this girl a few years back and our first date was weird. She was a friend of my brother and we had known each other a while before going out. Kinda friends. Anyway, we're on the date and she tells me that she had a weird dream about me. I had also had a weird dream about her that evening. She goes first. I was driving my teacher's car on my way to see you. We were on the phone trying to find each other. You kept saying I just drove past your apartment, but I was in the middle of nowhere and got really confused. Without really thinking about it, I reply, I was on the phone with you as you constantly drove past my apartment, but it wasn't your normal car and you were really confused. She's just staring at me like I was pulling her leg. Then it dawned on me, holy crap, we had the same dream. We shared 4 or 5 more dreams throughout the relationship at totally random times. I have a dream one night with some vague imagery that I interpreted as my grandmother's soul leaving her body. I woke up knowing she was going to pass soon, but I decided it was just a dream. 48 hours later, my dad called. She had sepsis and was in the hospital. She never woke up. Playing with my friend when I was young by the pond, we spotted some boys and being the bad bee that I am pulled a blueberry flavored lip gloss that I got free in a magazine out of my pocket for us both to use to make the boys like us. I thought that's how life worked. We started hopping along the stepping stones on the pond and the lip gloss falls out of my pocket into the pond. Both myself and my friend saw this happen. I was mad cause it was the only makeup my mom allowed me to have. Cut to about 5 hours later, I get home and go up to my room. Blueberry lip gloss was on my pillow. You know the creepy child in a horror movie? The one that doesn't smile and just stares at you. I saw one at an IKEA one time. It just stared at me as if it can penetrate my soul with its eyes. I went to a wedding the following week and there's that frickin' kid again looking creepy as ever because now he's wearing a bow tie. When I was 23, I went to a week's workshop with uni abroad to Barcelona. The workshop was based in an obscure part of the city and I always thought I'd never be able to find that area again. Fast forward about 15 years, I score a job in Barcelona. Get off the plane, go to the hotel near my new office and it's across from said workshop. I work there for 3 years. When that job ends, I move country again for about 5 years. About a month ago I was invited to interview for a job, which I'm now in the process for. And guess where the offices are? Yup, round the corner from the workshop that I thought I'd never find again. Wife and I were driving out of TX to come back home to Ohio. We stop at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Kind of a rundown little place. Wife goes in while I'm filling up. I finish and pay at the pump and decide to head in and use the restroom real quick. I walk out and the wife is at the checkout paying. Wall up and the guy just starts looking at me and then calls me out by my full name. LT? Yeah, your name is LT Drinksalat, right? Yeah. Do we know each other? Nope. Then how do you know my name? I dunno. Wife and I look at each other and we both got the heck out of there. I don't have a common name. I had never been to that gas station, let alone that town in TX ever. Every time my wife and I think about it, we can't explain it. I had an electronic watch that was set to remind me to pick up my foreign exchange student from high school after football practice. One day it just disappeared after he left, and the alarm wasn't telling me where it was. Fast forward about 18 months, and the alarm starts sounding in the living room every day at pickup time. I tore the living room apart, including checking the deep recesses of the sofa and behind the baseboards, and never found the watch. It stopped again after about 6 months. I'm assuming from dead batteries. I never figured out where it went for 18 months. Woke up one morning, went into the living room, and there was a pile of at least 100 maggots in the middle of the living room. Fat suckers, too. No idea where they came from, or perhaps more disturbingly, what they had eaten to get to that size. The other night I woke up and looked at my phone and it said 12:33 I think. Well, I went to the bathroom and got something to drink and came back to my room and checked my phone again and it said 11 o'clock. Maybe I was just tired, but it really made me question what happened. In middle school, some friends and I were skating to the mall. We were in the street in a residential area when a car backed out of a driveway right in front of me. On the right hand side of the street, there were cars parked at the curb, so I couldn't see it coming until the back fender was already in front of me. Stupidly, I veered to my right, hit the curb and left my board airborne and on a pretty flat trajectory. I closed my eyes and braced for impact, and landed on my back in the grassy front yard of the guy who backed out in front of me. It knocked the wind out of me but wasn't too bad. When I sat up and looked around, I was on the other side of a fence, wrought iron and brick with hedges. Had to be 10 feet from where I hit the curb. There is no way in heck I should have cleared both his car and the fence and hedges and everything. I still think I discovered how to no-clip eye-roll. I went to sleep on Wednesday and had a dream that I did everything I usually do on Thursday, to school, have lunch, etc. When I wake up as Friday and curious as heck, I ask my family if they remembered what happened yesterday and no one did. In high school, I remember going to English and the teacher did roll call. She called my name and I raised my hand and said I'm here, then she stopped, saying so he's not here. Then my friend and I laughed because I was obviously here. Figured she was fricking with me. That night my mom got a call telling her I wasn't at classes today. I was actually marked absent. I go back to school the next day and tell my friend Mrs. English teacher actually freaking counted me absent and he just said why wouldn't she though, to myself, haha, you're not funny, but I just let it slide because I though again, I was being fricked with. Then one of my other friends sits down and asks, you feeling better today? Or were you just playing hooky? I was so confused. Then I go to my first hour and that teacher hands me the work I supposedly missed from that day. I looked in my bag and had the same stuff guide and assignments already there, too. This day. I don't know if I missed that day of school or not. When I was a 6th grader, I had a dream my dad's work was removing his nameplate from his office door and mail cubby. He had been at this job for 7 years and I didn't think he would ever leave. Less than a month later he left for another job. When in the last year of middle school, it happened 2 times in the same week. I dreamt about the questions in oral exams their nights before, and I got asked exactly these. Fun facts. These questions weren't asked again for the whole week. In both cases, I decided to look at exactly these answers while traveling to school, with my mom helping me. I got a 10/10 because I knew everything about these. Different prof and subject, science and literature. I still don't get how it happened, but that helped me a lot to raise my reputation before finals. About a couple of years ago, a friend sent me a video and he asked me if I had a lost twin somewhere. It was a video made by amateur actors from the city I used to live in. There was this girl that looked just like me. She talked just like me and her part on the sketch consisted of telling a joke I used to tell all the time. Okay, so I was in my bedroom. It was winter, nighttime, so the windows were shut, all doors were shut, no fans on. No breeze basically. My bra was hanging vertically from the closet doorknob. Like one of the straps was on the doorknob and the bra just hung down vertically. It had been there like all night. Out of nowhere it swung like a pendulum. From completely motionless to almost a 45-degree angle to the left, then to the right, back to the left, and did this a few times before coming back to a complete stop. It's really weird and doesn't make any sense. There was nothing happening that could have caused that motion. It also swung in such a stiff way, it didn't twist or turn, just like a pendulum, back and forth a few times then stopped. No idea what it was. Senior year of high school, 30-minute lunch. My buddy and I drove all the way from my school to McDonald's. Normally about a 10-minute drive, so 20 minutes minimum there and back, but we stopped by my house, in between the school and McDonald's. I grab a shirt, change, leave, drive down the street, get into an altercation with a guy who we flipped off for tailgating. Gun is pulled, we think. He was across the street, looked like a gun but who knows. His wife in the passenger seat starts yelling at him, we part ways, go to McDonald's and order food, eat in the parking lot deciding we are late regardless. We had no access to the time in my car and our phones were in our lockers at the school. We also were frequent ditches tardy kids. Turns out this all occurred in 18 minutes on the dot. It's freaking impossible but it happened. My buddy and I still talk about it to this day saying we went through a wormhole or some crap. Or minus an, rest in peace. Somehow could time travel or slow down time. Blowing out a candle just to find it's lit again 30 minutes later. I remember considering buying Super Smash Bros for my 3DS but deciding not to because Kirby wasn't on it. He's my favorite. I even remember watching a YouTube video about why Kirby isn't in Smash for the 3DS, and something about if Nintendo will ever add him. Fast forward to Ultimate Smash Bros for the Switch being announced and seeing that Kirby is included. I tweet about being happy Kirby is added to the roster only to receive a reply from a friend that he's always been in Smash. Being a little embarrassed and very confused, I start looking it up on Google only to find Kirby on the cover of Smash Bros for the 3DS. I'm still confused to this day. Spent a day in town with a friend when I was like 15. We both headed to my place for lunch, but when I got there my mom asked me why I was back already. She went on to explain that it just came home, ate, got my pocket money from her and left again. A doppelganger ate my lunch and stole my pocket money. One time when I was maybe 7 or 8, my mom was reading The Hobbit to me. We got to a spot I had heard somewhere before. I told her I think she read this part already. She insisted we had never read it and went back to reading it to me. I started saying the lines with her words perfect. She stopped and looked at me while I continued quoting it flawlessly. I used to collect cards as a kid. Baseball cards, hockey cards, comic book cards, etc. I was collecting cards from the original TMNT movie at the time and there was only one card missing in my set. I couldn't get my hands on it no matter how many packs I bought. My family was on a road trip and I was in the back seat with the window open. A truck passed us on the highway and there was a huge gust of wind. My one missing Ninja Turtles card blew into the open window and landed on my lap. When I was young, probably around 8-12 age, in my closet we kept all of our board games. They were on a shelf that was much taller than me and I would have to reach to get them on my tippy toes. One night I'm sleeping in my bed. I'm still preteen at this point, but I'm sleeping and wake up to a super loud crashing noise in my closet, as if something fell or broke in there. Now I'm young, it's dark. I can't really see anything so I'm absolutely terrified right now. My door is closed and everyone is asleep. There's no possible way someone is in my closet right now for any reason. I was so scared that I was paralyzed, couldn't move and start to sweat. I was not about to go into the dark and open the door, and was not gonna get up and turn on the light. I was paralyzed. Eventually I sit long enough in fear that I do fall asleep. The next day I wake up and look in my closet and actually see a game in the ground open and pieces lying everywhere as if it did fall off the shelf. But now if you put it together, this isn't possible. The game was one of the ones stacked under 3 or 4 others, and those are still up there stacked just without the one on bottom. Those games had all been sitting there for months and months now. There's no way it was in a position to fall or anything like that. And there's no way in the middle of the night, an older sibling was coming into my room, into my closet, throwing a game on the ground, staying in there afterward long enough for me to fall asleep again before leaving, etc. So strange. Still remember the fear and confusion of that night as a kid, and have no idea how that happens. I saw a giant thing similar to a manta ray outside the airplane window. Other people say it was many windows long. It was made of something similar to oil. This is really weird to this day. When I was first teaching myself to speak Croatian, I would come home every day from work with a few new words in my vocabulary, and the day I learned the word for rabbit, I came home to my dog bouncing through a few feet of snow like a rabbit, so I nicknamed her Bilozek, or White Rabbit, in Croatian, and I called her that literally a half dozen times or so when there was no one around. Later that day my 10-year-old sister with Down syndrome came home from school and she doesn't speak English or any other language very well and she has trouble pronouncing more than a word or two at a time, but when she came home, she went right upstairs to my room, pointed at my dog, and to my absolute astonishment, she very clearly said white rabbit. I had never called the dog that in English and that was the first day I ever heard the Croatian word for rabbit, so there is nowhere for my little sister to have heard this before, and needless to say, the experience gave me goosebumps and a newfound respect for the magic of my little sister with special needs. She has continued to surprise the family and keep us guessing about the nature of our reality. Around 2003, my roommates and I saw a small whirlwind on top of a tall tree outside our apartment. It just sat there, consistent as can be, for about an hour. In 1972 I was in a Montreal metro subway, and I noticed that the woman on the platform across from me looked exactly like the woman standing right beside me. When I stepped forward and looked down the platform, every one of the people on my side had a twin directly opposite them on the other platform, and then a train pulled up on the other side, pulled away, and every one of the doppelgangers was still there. I freaked out and just ran out of the station, took buses home instead. You have been visited by the money cat like for good luck and fortune. I need some good luck PLS. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.